we're cleaning up the mess from the windstorm, and quite a mess it is. We on the day of the actual storm, it was really weird because we were sort of hunkered down, and then we got a phone call that a tree had blown over at the garage, and we had to venture out.
That was a trip.
So we were out driving through what was left of the windstorm. It was mostly gone at that point, but that didn't stop us from getting hit by tree branches and all kinds of things. Anyway, we wanted to do an update this week on what we've been up to at Garagemahal. In part, we're cleaning up at Garagemahal. The day of the storm, we got a phone call from the next door neighbor saying that our tree had visited his driveway and we needed to come look at it. And so we did, and
it was there.
It was there, yeah, it was there in his driveway, and he wasn't very happy about it, and calling insurance company. Anyway, bottom line is we're kind of getting things cleaned up. The whole city here is getting sort of cleaned up.
Right.
All is going well, and so we wanted to show you what we've been up to at Garagemahal. In part, our projects from when the power was off for a week, but. Mostly
those
stuff.
We could see to do.
Yes, because we were working by battery lights and window lights and so on and so forth. At any rate, we want to get caught up on that and just a bunch of projects we've been on for months.
Right.
And we haven't done an update on the garage for a while. So while we're cleaning up the mess over there, we thought we'd show you guys an update on the railroad and so on. So here we can see Karyn's workspace over her shoulder here. Anyway, as you can see, always nice and neat and organized and clean, unlike my workspace over here where I'm working currently on foam poles for the switching yard. Let's see, over here, this is the diorama that Steve made for us. Over here, the casting equipment. Up here, that's the attic. Some more models over here and display cases over here, telephone switchboard over here, and then out here, as you can see, the carpet is in. Here's the Mustang, and here's the big engine shop. What I'm currently working on over here is the switching yard that connects over to the backdrop. The game room over here, these are the games. And then, back here, another display case. The big display case. So here's the project I was working on at the time when the windstorm came and we lost all the power. These are the power and light poles for the switching yard. Now, if there's an upside to all of this disaster, it's that prototype research was readily available laying in the street and hanging from the trees and so on after the storm. So in walking around the street, just the block here at Garagemahal, there was all kinds of readily available prototype research just hanging from the wires and hanging in the trees. But it gave me an opportunity to look this stuff over up close and personally as we were working on this. Some of these things I have no idea what they are, and I'm not really planning to model those, like these markings on the pole here. But this is the little ladder grabs that go up the side of the pole, and to be able to get right up close and personal gave me a great prototype for fabricating my own out of brass.
Oh, those look like the real thing.
Yeah, they just need a little rust, and I think they're going to look fine.
Yes.
Now the cross arms were glued in place, but I also came back and bolted them in place with 0090 hardware, rather than using like nut bolt and washer castings that actually physically attaches these things to the poles and provides strength, because I don't necessarily trust super glue. The arms themselves are bent out of brass and then soldered, and suddenly I found myself with no soldering iron because the power was off. But that did give me something of an opportunity to just go ahead and start cutting out parts and fabricating sub-assemblies in anticipation of the power eventually coming back on so that my soldering iron would start working again. I looked everywhere for something that I could use for these light shades, these overhead fluted lampshades. And I found these on Amazon. They're actually called a backplate, and they're designed to be used with drawer pulls. So you would set this against the drawer and then screw the drawer pull through it, giving a little decorative element. But they were repurposed into light shades because they look quite similar to the light shades you'd see on the older light poles. And then I had to fabricate the light sockets. Now the one in the upper left over there is going to be a damaged one laying in a heap on the ground somewhere. I only need 5 of those. So I got those all put together after the power came on and shot them with appropriate color paints. I also came back and added a gloss coat to this so it looks more like an enameled surface.
I remember when streetlights looked like this when I was a kid.
And there's still a few around too. Now the poles themselves actually mount directly to the backdrop, so I sanded off a little flat section there to help attach them to the backdrop. Now I still had a tiny amount of track work to do here where the caboose track splits off from the ladder track, and I was waiting for these switch points to come from Logos Creek, Mike over at Logos Creek. Excellent, cool products and really fun people. Just a small little company, Logos Creek, but they make all the components that I'm using here for my turnouts. So I had to put this one last switch together where the caboose track splits off to the left here from the ladder track. I'm actually using their long switch points, which were intended for use with the larger frog numbers. I'm only using a number 6 frog because everything has to fit into a pretty tight space. But I really like the look of these with the long switch points. Oh, and oops, there's little mistakes that you make and you find as you're going along. But trying to get a nice straight ladder track here. I also am isolating all of my frogs so that they're electrically isolated from the whole rest of the railroad. And then I had to go through and hook up the last 3 switch stands. The first 2 were already in place. One had to be substituted with a ground throw because clearances were a real problem. But I put in the last 3 switch stands and hooked those up to the switch points using Walther's 0090 hardware, same thing I was using on the power poles. Back when I was working in HO and O scale, I would solder these connections together. But working in the large scale, you can go for that little added detail of actually having real nuts and bolts holding everything together instead of just solder and nut bolt and washer castings. Mike over at Logos Creek gave me some of this printed circuit board material to use to connect to the actual switch points. On my first switch, I actually fabricated these parts, and boy, this is a lot simpler to use the printed circuit board material, and it works and it looks just fine. I've got a couple of different types of switch stands here, all of them from Logos Creek, and then working switch lanterns on all of my switch stands. I just love the look of that, the little lit up switch lanterns on there.
Oh, this makes me want to be either at Ely or Chama. Oh, man.
Boy, it brings back fond memories for me. And now comes the job of wiring the entire underside of the railroad yard. Now that the tracks are all in, I might as well go ahead and hook those up to power. So the way I do that, and the way Steve and Don and everybody has been doing that, is we run a very heavy bus, a 12-gauge bus, all the way around the railroad carrying the power, and then take these smaller wires, these drops down from every single rail, so that every individual rail has a drop down to it so that power is never required to move through the rail joiners. It just makes a much more reliable system. But it does require soldering a lot of wires. But then for the first time ever, look at this, a moving train. Haven't hooked up sound or DCC or anything yet, This is just running off of a big 5 amp power supply. Of course, once the trains start moving around, you find all kinds of little problems. In this case, a clearance problem. I wasn't counting on, boom, that happening. The big valve chest on the K27 here hit the switch lantern. There's really not a lot of space here between the ladder track and the caboose track. And, well, check this out. Those big wide valves on a Mikado run right into the switch lantern. So I needed to make a small adjustment here. My decision was to just slightly move the switch stand back away from the ladder track and then go to a taller, narrower switch lantern, which is easily done because all of my switch lanterns just slide off and on, so I can switch them out just like on the real railroad whenever I feel like switching to a different lantern at any point. Mental note to self, don't put a lantern here with day targets or it's going to get run into.
So the next challenge was how to make a transformer. Every good little power pole has its transformer. So we got some copper tubing from Steve, and from there we created a transformer by inserting a dowel and sanding the top off to make it dome-shaped. And of course, that would have sufficed, but I had to get very intricate. So then I decided to cut a little strap of brass material, drill a microscopic hole in it, and make a bolt using just bending over the little piece of brass rod and a seed bead. The top of the transformer, those are also seed beads and some wire, and same with the 3 coming out of the bottom. And seed beads for ornament, the insulators.
You know, and once there's some primer paint on there, they really come to life.
Shocking.
So then I went to work figuring out how and where to mount Karyn's transformers on here and put some weathered paint on them and so on. This was the final configuration that I came up with. 2 of the 5 poles have transformers and the others do not. But the transformers add a great little bit of detail up there.
Boy, they really look real up there.
Don't they? I just need now to figure out how to wire them in and put in the actual cross wires going from pole to pole. But again, there's plenty of research out in the street, so we'll figure it out. And now, as part of my wiring program for the underside of the switching yard, I'm also running 2 different lighting buses, a 3-volt lighting bus to run the LEDs and the switch lanterns, and now a 12-volt bus to run the incandescent lights in the light poles. Meaning that my next project is probably going to be a little control panel to turn on and off the different lights.
Well, this was my contribution to the day's events. I bought a kit on Amazon, and it's kind of like a little apartment, but this one posed some challenges. A lot of the parts, I'm trying to translate, number one, from a foreign language into English, which is never a good idea, but I had to kind of make my own plan here, as I did with the couch and the coffee table. The computer was added, as well as the little side lamps. The kitchen, I did follow instructions, sans the cupcake there. I added the cupcake. This was part of the original plan, the little lemonade glasses with a slice of lemon. Those are fun because the watermelon and the lemon, they're just like a little tube that you slice up. And of course the bedroom area, that was a little bit of a challenge, as the bed was not complete either. I had to make the headboard and footboard. And I created the table for the computer, and I thought the computer needed a light, so I added a little tiny itty bitty LED light so the computer screen looks like it lights up. And of course the bathroom wouldn't be complete without a bottle of shampoo, and that was my idea. After making 10 million little books, it was pretty fun to do. I liked it.
Turned out well.
It did. Okay, this one. You have to put on your bifocals for this. This is smaller, probably closer to O scale. But I decided to make another model for my daughter. She was interested in them, and I made one for her since her favorite color is green. And this is a foresty scene with 2 little rabbits that live there. A lot of fun to make. Just tiny, tiny little parts, and even books that were folded up to lay on the bed, and pillows. Just a lot of fun.
I just love the idea that it's a tree house. I think you should scratch build a tree house.
Well, there's a lot of logs laying around right now.
Yeah, there's wood everywhere, so let's
That's right.
gather some up, and you should build one of these from scratch, because I know you could
It could be
easily
fun.
do that. Yeah, and we'll just go outside and pick up some tree branches and
See what we come up
see
with.
what we can come up with.
Now this is what I call my pink dream, the ultimate girl house. This is a 32nd scale model again, a little apartment. I picked up a kit again on Amazon. This is the little computer center, and everything had to be made from this scratch book. So the instructions were in this book, which happened to be in a foreign language, translated to some English, but it makes it very, very difficult to understand what they're talking about. So a lot of times I just decided to freelance it and do it my way, including not putting the love seat at the bottom of the stairs. So up here is the bedroom area and the divider that goes between the bedroom area and the bathroom, and that required having some little shelves made for it. And these shelves, I decided to do sort of my own thing here with the parts from yet another project I had, but I thought it looked better, a lot more finished. I decided it needed a desk lamp for the computer, so I used an LED light as an addition. The kitchen table, of course, has a lot of food, another cupcake and cups of tea, and the tea is on in the distance with the coffee maker and the little kitchen range. So after completing the kitchen, then I decided to make another little table. This wasn't part of the kit, but I thought, again, it looked far better than the love seat at the bottom of the stairs. So a nice plant and a table and a rabbit. The guitar on the couch and the throw, I had to work really hard to make those stay put. They wanted to curl up and come off, but thank goodness for clamps. It helped hold the whole thing together while the glue dried. So I completed the bed, and it looked really fluffy and feminine, but it needed one slight detail. A little kitty cat sleeping on it.
Turned out really neat.
Yes, I had 2 extra pom-poms. I'm not sure where they were supposed to go, so I turned them into a cat. So I've got all the finer details done, but there's one final detail I need to complete, and that is hooking up all of these wires. They are color-coded, but it's a type of wire that just does not really want to twist together, so I have to solder them. But the end result, man, look at this.
Doesn't a model look different when you turn on the lights?
I love it.
It's like when Steve is building one of these building interiors, and this is about the same size he's working in. When the lights come on, everything just changes.
It looks so realistic.
It's
I wonder if
just-
the coffee's ready.
It's steaming away. I think it's all set to go. But it just blows my mind how nice these things look when you turn on the lights. And that's really not that different than what I'm working on over at the switching yard.
Right. I love lighting. It just makes me feel so peaceful when it's on, like it's a really little house.
Well, so that's what we've been up to.
Right.
And we continue to be up to it. We're pressing on with the model railroad, and Karyn just started yet another, this time it's a full-size dollhouse.
Right.
12th scale.
12th scale.
So that's kind of neat. Just a room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a study. It's full of books.
It's full of books.
Very intellectual.
Very intellectual.
Yeah, I might learn something.
I
there.
like intellectuals.
Intellectuals.
Yeah. So that'll be really fun. So we'll update again at some point on progress on all of that stuff. Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, pop over to the channel, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. And the easy way to do that is with the blue button. Are we ready? Zoink! The blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here on Tuesday, because we'll be playing with some toys.
Yes.
See you then.
See you.
Bye-bye.